Incredible scars exposed, how a Mafia boss's night revealed his nanny's touching, hidden secret. Jack the Hammer Mancini had built his empire on fear and intimidation, wielding power like a weapon. But that night in the dim diner tucked away in New Jersey, everything began to unravel. A routine meeting spiraled into chaos when betrayal erupted. An unexpected bullet whizzed past him, a sharpened reminder that loyalty was a fleeting concept in his world. He fled to his childhood home amid a storm brewing both outside and within him, desperate for solace. As he stepped through the old wooden door, the familiar scent of marinara and baked bread washed over him like a warm embrace. Nostalgia clawed at him, tugging hard at memories of laughter and love wrapped in the arms of his caregiver, Maria. She emerged from the shadows of the kitchen, her smile reflecting the warmth of a mother's heart. But as Jack returned her embrace, guilt gnawed at him. He had left a different kind of warmth behind, a warmth that promised reprieve from his relentless pursuit of power. Maria's eyes were shining with an unconditional adoration he feigned being comfortable with, but beneath that smile lay unspoken fears that lingered in the air. "I'm here now, Maria," he said, an edge of desperation creeping into his voice, but the words felt hollow, as if he fought against a truth he didn't want to face. He settled into one of the worn cushions that felt as familiar as his own skin, yet emotional unrest made it impossible to feel at ease. While Maria bustled in the kitchen, he felt the walls closing in on him, boxed by the tension between who he had become and who he was meant to be. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Unsettled, Jack retreated to the attic, seeking distraction. Instead, he stumbled upon Maria's hidden journal. Every word felt like a dagger, carving deeper into the layers of his guilt. Aspirations overshadowed by sacrifice spilled from the pages. Her dreams would never materialize because of the life he chose. He had pursued power fiercely, while she had built her world around caring for him. The juxtaposition struck him. Jack had gained wealth and stature, but at what cost? A legacy stained with blood. As unease crawled along his spine, he wrestled with the reality of his past choices. Could the man who wielded fear ever reconnect with the love Maria bestowed upon him?
The phone's sudden ring shattered his tumultuous thoughts, yanking him back to his sordid life. Who could it be? Was it a threat? Anxiety raced through him, heart pounding against the cage of his ribs. He could keep playing the boss, move through the shadows, or could he show vulnerability, even to someone who had loved him like a mother? Maria watched with concern as he gripped the phone fiercely, the agonizing reality of his dual existence high-tensioned in that moment. The clock ticked on, pregnant with anticipation. Jack stood at the brink of decision. How could he risk everything he's built for a vague notion of redemption? His whole life lay heavy on his shoulders, and in the deep, quiet silence that followed, each breath felt like a countdown to a future unmade. What would it cost him to reveal his true self, and would that price shatter the very foundation of family he desperately wanted to reclaim? Jack stared at the phone, the persistent ringing cutting through the memories swirling in his mind. Each chime was an entreaty that felt both familiar and foreign, an echo of connections he had either cherished or severed in his ceaseless drive for power. Fingers trembling, he finally answered, steeling himself for whatever awaited on the other end. "Jack?" The voice was coded in authority, tinged with a sense of urgency that sent a cold wave of adrenaline coursing through him. Enzo, his right-hand man, was the last person he wanted to speak with right now. "You need to come back. Things are getting out of control." With each word Enzo spoke, a knot of dread tightened in Jack's chest. The very world he had so meticulously crafted was dependent on ruthless control. Control he felt slipping away like sand through his fingers. "What happened?" he demanded, a voice hardened by years of command, though internally uncertainty warred with bravado. "It's about the shipment. Someone has stirred the pot. Cops are snooping. We need you, now." Jack felt rage bubble up, but beneath it lay a deeper frustration, a craving for something beyond the violent chaos. The life he had chosen had always promised stability through fear, but it had become its own prison. As Enzo continued to rattle off names and details, Jack's mind drifted back to the journal, to Maria's unfulfilled dreams.
Did this life of treachery and danger even align with who he intended to be? "I'll be there," he finally replied, the resolve in his voice battling with a flicker of doubt about a life he could scarcely acknowledge. Hanging up, he found Maria's eyes on him, wide with worry. It struck him then. Here was the purity of familial love, stark against the backdrop of his self-imposed desolation, a constant that could offer him solace or lay bare his sins. "Why is it always about power?" she asked softly, the words cutting through his defenses. "You've built a fortress, Jack, but it seems more like a cage."
Her sincere gaze pierced him, revealing wounds he had kept hidden even from himself. A life of domination left little room for vulnerability. Yet here she was, a reminder of everything good and genuine, everything he had overlooked in pursuit of a crown built on suffering. "I'm doing this for us," he countered weakly, but the conviction was waning with each passing moment. "For who, Jack? For you? For me? Or for the empire that's consuming you?" Maria's words hung heavy between them, drenched in unasked-for truth. In that moment, Jack realized that the time for confrontation had come, not just with external threats, but with the very self that had long ago become unrecognizable. He turned to Maria, the weight of his choices crashing down. "What if I could change? What if I wanted to step back?" She shook her head with compassion, yet skepticism lingering in her eyes. "It's never too late, but it can be dangerous to step away. You'll have to fight your way back, face the things you've done." Jack swallowed hard, the gravity of her insight stinging more than any bullet he had ever faced. This path wouldn't just bring external battles, it would entail confronting the very essence of who he had become. As he prepared to leave, adrenaline coursed alongside a burgeoning hope. Could he truly carve a new avenue amid the ruin? Could the man behind the hammer wield a different kind of power? He reached for the door, each step resonating with the tension of unmade decisions. With vengeance in the air and ghosts of the past looming large, Jack Mancini was on the precipice of weighty choices. Answers led toward battles he was leaving and confrontations he was running to. Would he find redemption among the chaos, or would ultimately succumb to the darkness? The night was young, and both his past and his future awaited. The night air was thick with tension as Jack drove through the stillness of the city. Neon lights cast ghostly reflections on the windshield, hinting at a vibrant life outside his own, one he had forsaken for years. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, the leather cold against his palm, a reminder of the physicality of his choices. The meeting with Enzo loomed before him, but each mile felt like a journey deeper into a labyrinth of his own making, a maze tangled not just in crime, but in past decisions, unchosen paths, and neglected truths. As he approached the warehouse, flashes of doubt flickered through his mind. Would he confront the enemy he had created within himself, or simply walk further into the darkness? The voices of his past echoed sharply, especially Maria's, urging him toward introspection. He parked the car, a sudden wave of anxiety sending his heart racing. This wasn't just about a shipment or power dynamics. It was the beginning of a reckoning. Upon entering the warehouse, the atmosphere was electric. Enzo stood at the center, flanked by men whose eyes were flickering with suspicion and fear.
Jack could sense the weight of their expectations. He had always been their leader, but now his own leadership felt precarious. Jack's mind raced. The realization struck that his power relied on the very fear he wished to shatter. Then, as he stood in the shadows, he understood. It wasn't simply the criminals around him he feared. It was the reflection of the man he had become. "Jack!" Enzo barked, pulling him back into the present. "We need to tighten our operations. Fix this now, where everything crumbles." "Fix this," Jack repeated. The weight of those words felt heavier than ever. The chorus of threats and deceit seemed endless, yet now the challenge felt different. It was not just the impending danger from law enforcement, but rather the silent judgment of his own soul. He had retreated into this world seeking control, yet here he was, realizing how little control he truly had over his own life or heart. The dim light poured over them like disdain, and Jack decided to flip the script. "We're stepping back. No more terror. Instead, we confront this head-on. We'll eliminate the weakness." Enzo and the others exchanged incredulous glances, but there was clarity dawning on Jack.
an unsettling mixture of liberation and fear. He was not only fighting for his empire, but for his redemption. Every action was tethered to either reinforcing the cage he had constructed or shattering it open, unveiling the possibility of something genuine. He could feel the resistance in the air, a virus spreading among the men, the weight of his mission clashing with their foundational beliefs in dominance and chaos. "If we keep this up, we'll just end up dead or in jail," Jack asserted, each word gaining traction. "It's time for a different approach." The room grew silent as Enzo scoffed. "And what do you propose? To hug it out with the cops?" Jack met his gaze, the steely determination in his eyes facing the onslaught of incredulity. "No, we negotiate. We end the cycle of violence. But to do this, you will have to trust me, believe that this could reshape everything we know." He could see the flicker of doubt in the eyes surrounding him, but also a spark of curiosity. Maybe they too were tired of the endless cycle. Jack felt the glimmer of hope begin to morph into a flicker of possibility. Would they embrace the risk of change, or retreat deeper into the shadows of their old lives? As his heart raced, Jack felt the darkness within him shrink under the weight of emerging clarity. The notion that transformation was not simply a risk, it was a necessity. And now, standing amidst the chaos he sought to command, a question loomed ostensibly. Would they support him in crafting a path toward redemption, or would he be left to fight this battle alone, grappling with the demons that had once defined him? The stakes were at an all-time high, as Jack knew that the real fight was only just beginning. Moments later, Enzo stepped forward, his expression still clouded with skepticism, yet Jack could see a small glimmer of recognition. The labyrinth might yield a way out after all. But the road to transformation would not be without collateral. What ghosts from the past would surface as Jack forged ahead, and how would they confront the deep-seated turmoil lurking within their perilous world? The charged silence was palpable, thickening the already stagnant air of the warehouse. Jack locked eyes with Enzo, that split second stretching into infinity as he weighed the risks of his ambition against the palpable skepticism from his crew. This was a pivotal moment, a crossroads where the future of their criminal enterprise and his own redemption hung delicately in the balance. "Look," Jack started, his voice steady yet low, meant to draw in their attention. "I know change is frightening. I know this isn't the plan we've adhered to for so long, but does that not suggest it's time to rethink our direction? What if we could walk away from the fear that's kept us shackled for years?" He noticed a shift. The weight in the room began to lighten, curiosity flickering in their eyes despite a palpable reluctance. Perhaps the bleakness of continuous violence paired with impending losses had begun to gnaw at them too. Jack was no longer just sparking doubt in their plan. He was igniting hope, and that fire felt as invigorating as it was dangerous. Enzo's brow was tight with scrutiny, but Jack could sense the classic underdog struggle within him. "Trust? That's a bold ask from a man who's orchestrated chaos all his life. Why should we believe you now?" Jack inhaled deeply, searching within himself for wisdom that had long been buried under layers of machismo and crime. "Because I've seen too many lives wasted. Our lives," he said, his voice thickening with resolution. "We can either continue this game, or we can try something different, something that might build us a future." It was a fragile moment, and Enzo's features twisted as he wrestled with Jack's proposition, weighing the logistical difficulties against the unease of the status quo. "And how exactly do you plan to negotiate? They'll see us as weak." Jack felt a rush of adrenaline. This was where he needed to be, on the precipice of vulnerability. "We position ourselves as players, not pawns of fear. We engage with our enemies as respected rivals, speak their language, and offer them choices instead of threats." Murmurs arose in the room, skeptical voices grappling with the revolutionary shift Jack was proposing. He sensed the tide turning slightly in his favor. He needed to solidify that shift with conviction. "Choices bring us power. Let's give ourselves the authority to define our own fate rather than letting fear dictate it for us." As it became clear that some men buzzed with doubt, others wrestled with interest, he capitalized on it. "When we were children, we wanted to be heroes, not monsters.
Every day we allow this darkness to consume us. We bleed that childhood dream dry. Let's fight for respect, not just fear." His words landed heavily amidst the men, and for the first time, Jack noticed their hardened expressions soften. Could they really envision a life unfettered by the suffocating grasp of their past? What frightened him most was not the possibility of failure, but the hope that flickered alive, so easily crushed under the weight of old habits. "Look, if this fails," Jack pressed, tone resolute, It's on me. I'm willing to take that risk, but you need to step up and trust that we can achieve more together than we ever could divided by fear." Finally, Enzo nodded slowly. It was a measured acceptance, but a significant step nevertheless. Tension still brewed in the air, thick as smoke, as an unspoken agreement began to form. "Let's put your idea to the test," Enzo grumbled, yet the sudden spark in his eyes suggested acceptance laced with an unarticulated longing. As they began to hash out plans, the flicker of anticipation turned into cautious energy, a budding awareness that they were on the cusp of something unprecedented. But lurking just beyond this moment of formation was a myriad of threats, old rivalries, personal betrayals, and daunting paranoia. Jack could feel the shadows of his past drawing ominously closer. With the faint echoes of old ghosts whispering in the back of his mind, one tantalizing question emerged. Would his vision for change truly cleanse the sins of yesterday, or simply invite a torrent of new horrors? The path ahead beckoned, uncertain but exciting, a gamble unearthed from the ashes of betrayal, but what awaited him just beyond the horizon remained shrouded in obscurity. Transitioning from crime to negotiation would demand fierceness, but what sacrifices would he have to make to protect the fragile buds of trust starting to grow within this group, or could he afford to risk it all and emerge anew? The air cracked with a tension that felt almost electric, the dim light of the warehouse flickering as Jack contemplated the gravity of their situation. Each man around the table bore his own scars, both visible and buried deep within. This was a pivotal moment, and he was acutely aware of how fragile hope could be, especially when juxtaposed against their long-standing loyalty to violence and fear.
Over the following days, Jack immersed himself in orchestrating their new approach, poring over strategies that would empower rather than intimidate. He spent hours targeting potential rivals, not with threats, but with the promise of equal footing. Each conversation was a test of his resolve. Jack found himself not just negotiating with others, but with himself, constantly confronting ingrained habits that felt foreign under the encouraging light of possibility. Daily, he dug deeper into his own psyche, wrestling with the choices that had led him to criminality. In private moments, he reflected on buried talents that he had long abandoned, his ability to listen, to inspire, and even to empathize. The latter proved difficult. Guilt hung tight around his chest like a noose, a reminder of what he had taken from others. As he honed the plan, each interaction outside the crew honed his skills. Negotiating with rival gangs required a stance Jack had never practiced: transparency. He began to see the value in vulnerability, a strategy that had felt like weakness in the past. The more he practiced, the more he discovered a voice within him that had long been suppressed, a voice that commanded respect, not through fear, but through understanding. Yet each step forward resurfaced haunting memories. Old acquaintances and enemies lingered in the shadows, lurking like wolves, ready to pounce should he misstep. The tension ignited a fear he thought he had buried deep within. Could he really emerge transformed, or would the darkness of his past consume him with every advancement he attempted? Each day, Jack felt a strange duality. He was both the hopeful architect of a new life and the anguished prisoner of the old. The challenge weighed heavily on him. He knew he needed to practice what he preached to his crew. Building trust meant exposing himself to possible betrayal. Could he navigate that path without slipping back to his old ways? Frustration surged as he ran through the plans, testing each approach against what he knew of their old tactics. Every failure forced him into an introspection that felt both cleansing and painful. The key to transforming the world around him lay in the pivotal key of transformation, himself. He stood before a mirror one afternoon, staring deep into his own eyes, searching for the courage to lead effectively. What would it take for him to finally break free from the chains of his past and emerge as the leader capable of sparking a true revolution? As the sun dipped below the horizon, a newfound determination burned in Jack's chest. He wouldn't just change the game, he would rewrite the rules. But the path forward teemed with uncertainty, and against the backdrop of his unresolved past, the question loomed larger than ever. Could he hold on to his vision, or would those ghosts drag him back into darkness?
Internal conflict wrestled with external realities, and just when it seemed an answer might begin to form, the phone buzzed on the table, cleaving through his moment of clarity. The caller ID thawed the warmth of his ambition, leaving only dread. A name he feared far too much.
a rival from the past who had a way of erasing dreams with a single call. The moment of truth had arrived. Jack's pulse quickened as he stared at the phone. The name on the screen was a ghost of his past, one that reminded him of all he had fought to escape. This call could shatter everything he had been building. He inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of desperation seep into his bones. "Pick up, Jack," he muttered to himself, battling the instinct to let the call go to voicemail. This was not just a call, it was a crossroads. Reluctantly, he tapped the screen. "Yeah?" His voice was steadier than he felt, but he knew better than to betray himself. Silence loomed on the other end, followed by a low, mocking laugh. "Thought you could stay away from the game forever? Just because you've been playing house with a bunch of thugs doesn't mean the past doesn't want its dues." Dave, the man, was a landmine in Jack's world, always poised to explode. This wasn't random, it was calculated. Jack gripped the edge of the table, his mind racing to devise a response that wouldn't expose his vulnerability. He couldn't afford to show fear, not now. "Don't get ahead of yourself," Jack replied, attempting to maintain a nonchalant tone. "I'm done with that life." The lie felt heavy on his tongue, but it seemed to amuse Dave. "Right? How's that working out for you? Don't forget, Jack, the moment you turn your back, it all comes crashing down. You're a puppet convincingly playing the artist." Jack's heart dropped. He felt the truth of it. He was still so tied to that world, trying to rewrite his script while others still held the pen. The haunting memories of betrayal surged forward, stark against the fragile hope he had begun to build. The call ended abruptly, and he was left standing in the dim light of the warehouse, his resolve challenged anew. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and he rubbed his hands together as if trying to clean away a film of dirt that clung to him from his past life. Even with strength and purpose, the shadow of Dave's voice lingered. Struggling with a sudden urge to lash out, he turned away from the phone and took a deep breath. A strategy was necessary. He had to outsmart his old rival, but how? Thinking through various angles, Jack realized he needed to embrace the vulnerability he had recently experimented with. It was a long shot, but if he could show his crew, and perhaps even rivals, that he was a different man, it could serve as a shield. That evening, he gathered his crew, preparing them for an open meeting. The thought made his stomach churn, but as he looked around the room at the men who had chosen to trust him, something shifted inside.
Jack felt an urgency not just to lead, but to be wholly honest, even if it meant laying bare his scars. "Listen up," he began, his voice uncharacteristically steady. "We're making changes, but this requires trust. I want you all to know who I've been. I've been where many of you are now, lost, misguided, but I'm committed to a new path." Grumbling erupted, splintered by skepticism, yet he pressed on through clenched teeth. "I want to empower us all." The words felt foreign each time they left his lips. "I know this all sounds like cliché, but please hear me out. My past duties might haunt me, but I refuse to let them dictate our future. We won't survive pushing fear. It's time to earn respect again, this time through solidarity and courage." As he spoke, some eyes began to soften, others narrowed with disbelief. His heart pounded against the rising tide of expectations, but this was his chance to redefine not just his life, but the life of those around him. It was a gamble, yet the only one worth taking. When the meeting finally adjourned, the room hummed with energy and doubt. Jack felt exhilarated yet terrified, standing on the precipice of a new kind of untested loyalty. What if they rejected him? What if the ghosts of his past resurgent were stronger than his present intentions? As the crew trickled into their own thoughts, Jack's phone buzzed again. A different name, one he recognized but hadn't spoken to in a long time. This call could change everything, yet uncertainty clawed at his gut. The potential repercussions were staggering as he prepared for yet another fight against his past. Would this name reconcile his struggle, or set it ablaze once more? The phone buzzed insistently, vibrating against the table like a persistent reminder of the choices he had yet to face. Jack stole a glance at the screen. The name pulsed back, practically daring him to pick up. It belonged to Mia, the one person who had been there through more than he cared to remember, but also one who could peel back the layers he had worked so hard to construct. He hesitated, knowing that the conversation could easily pull him back into his old self. Yet he also understood that avoiding her would be just another failure masquerading as a tactic. "Okay, let's see what you want," he murmured, pressing accept, his heart hammering in the silence. "Jack," her voice floated through, calm yet laced with concern. "I heard about your meeting.
You're trying to change things, huh? Yeah, kind of, Jack replied, trying to keep the uncertainty from his tone. You could say I'm turning a new leaf. There was quiet on the line, an oppressive pause laden with unspoken truths. Jack fidgeted, caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He considered the conversations they'd had, the long nights discussing dreams, fears, and the ways they hoped to rewrite their narratives. You know they're not going to take you seriously, right?
This isn't just about words. It's about proving you've changed. They'll test your resolve, she intoned, her voice steady, grounding him as he digested the implications. I know, Jack sighed, the admission weighing heavily in his gut. But I can't just keep running from my past. If I want them to trust me, I need to show I'm different. Are you ready for that? Mia's question cut through the air, stark and piercing. The question hung in the silence, forcing Jack to confront his inner conflict. Was he truly ready? He had been building a new identity, yet the shadows of doubt loomed large. The vulnerable honesty he had shared with his crew hadn't been easy, nor had it been well received. He looked around his warehouse, his sanctuary, filled with the remnants of fleeting glory and the weight of expectations that followed him like a specter. I think so, he finally replied, but the conviction felt fragile, like glass poised to shatter. I've had enough of living in the shadows. Then stop letting fear control you, Mia urged, her tone softening. You've come so far. Show them the real you, Jack. Not just the leader, but the man you want to be. Her words ignited something like hope. Jack felt the edges of his resolve sharpen, yet with that came the acknowledgement of the risks. If he put himself out there, fully exposed, he could face not just rejection, but also the scrutiny of his past. Would he be able to absorb that fallout? What if I fail? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Then you get up and try again. Failing doesn't define you. You have to believe in your own worth, Jack. That's the only way to break the cycle. The call ended, and Jack pocketed his phone, contemplating her words. The evening's meeting hadn't been the end. It had been just one push towards his reformation journey. Was he truly ready to embrace every side of that journey? The risks were insurmountable, yet the prospect of failure paled in comparison to the thought of navigating through life void of authenticity. Just then, the door to the warehouse creaked open. A figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the dim light. Jack's pulse quickened once more as he recognized his visitor. It was Mark, an old associate, a ghost surfacing when he least expected it. Looks like you're trying to be a good guy now, Jack, Mark said with a sly grin. Jack's heart raced. The confrontation he dreaded had arrived sooner than expected. Let's see how long that lasts. The stakes just climbed higher, and for the first time, Jack felt the very ground beneath him shake, demanding he either rise to the occasion or fall back into the abyss. What choice would he make? Jack barely processed Mark's taunts, his thoughts whirling with the implications of the confrontation. The old friend stood there, confidence radiating off him like a beacon, and for a moment, Jack felt equally drawn back into their shared past, a past filled with reckless decisions and a reckless camaraderie.
Nice place you've got, Mark continued, stepping further inside the warehouse, his eyes scanning the walls adorned with the remnants of Jack's previous life, the graffiti memories marking both triumphs and failures. Jack clenched his fists but didn't speak. Every second felt like a weight pressing down, urging him to respond, cementing his resolve to embrace the man he wanted to be. What do you want, Mark? He managed, his voice steady though his stomach churned. Just checking in on my favorite ex-kingpin. Thought you might need a little motivation to stay on the right path, Mark replied, a smirk tugging at his lips. You, out here pretending to put your life in order. What a joke. Jack faced him fully, refusing to back down. I'm not pretending. I'm trying to make things right. Mark's laughter filled the space, ricocheting off the walls and making Jack's skin crawl. Right. That's rich. You think anyone cares about your little redemption story? You turn up to meetings and share your feelings, but deep down, you're still that same guy looking for the next score. The words stung, igniting an inner battle. Jack had spent countless hours rebuilding his reputation, peeling off layers of his past, but Mark was a reminder of how thin that veil could truly be. The searing truth behind those words danced menacingly at the edge of his consciousness. I don't need you to validate my journey, Jack shot back, fighting to keep his voice calm. With each word, he felt a flicker of his old, assertive self emerge. This isn't about popularity contests. It's about me, not you." For a fleeting moment, it seemed Mark's confidence faltered, but he quickly regained his composure. "I'll give you this, you've certainly grown some backbone, but you've got to know that the moment you slip back into old habits is the moment I'll be there to remind you who you really are." Jack's got twisted at the implication. It wasn't just Mark's words, it was the threat they carried of those shadows creeping back. Would all the progress he had made, all the honesty and raw vulnerability, be washed away in a moment of weakness? He thought of Mia's voice pushing him forward, challenging him to reject the fear that had consumed him for too long. "Maybe you don't understand what change truly looks like," Jack said, his tone fortifying. "Maybe you're so trapped in the past that you can't accept that I'm moving forward." Mark's smile faded momentarily, replaced by something darker. "You think you're done with us? I don't think you understand just how deep those ties run." He took a step closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a deadly secret. "Think long and hard about what you want, Jack, because I can assure you, escaping is never as simple as you believe." Jack felt the fabric of his resolve shift beneath the weight of Mark's words.
This was not simply the reckoning of an old friendship. It was a confrontation of his demons, the voices of doubt and temptation again making their way to the forefront. "No more games, Mark. I'm not who I was," Jack asserted, setting his shoulders back, determined. "And it's time I embrace my own truth." The tension between them crackled like electricity, tangible and heavy. As Mark chuckled darkly, Jack could see the challenge in his eyes. The game was never going to end, and the stakes had only risen. Uncertainty washed over Jack, a tidal wave of questions. Could he withstand what lay ahead? Would he remain steadfast in the face of past shadows? Here, in this moment, surrounded by the reminders of who he used to be, he had a choice to make: to confront Mark or retreat into the comfort of old defenses. His heart raced with the weight of possibility and peril. Either path could lead him further into the man he wanted to be, or back into the darkness he fought so hard to escape. As the door swung open once more, revealing another familiar face from his past yet again, Jack prepared himself. The next round was about to begin, and the question loomed ominously. Could he truly transform, or was he destined to repeat the cycle? Jack inhaled sharply, the sudden shift in the atmosphere igniting a flicker of apprehension. As the door creaked, revealing another figure, an involuntary wave of familiarity washed over him, one that mingled with dread. It was Chris, the once loyal lieutenant who had stood at Jack's side through the darkest times, now a portent of potential upheaval in Jack's precarious journey towards redemption. "Did I walk in on a reunion?" Chris's voice dripped with sarcasm, shadows of their past lingering in his tone. His eyes moved between Jack and Mark, as if evaluating the tension that charged the air. "What do you want, Chris?" Jack's voice was steadier now, a stark contrast to the uncertainty gnawing at him. The confrontation with Mark had pushed him onto this path of self-reflection. He had no room for further distractions. A smirk curled on Chris's lips, but there wasn't humor in it. "Just came to see how my boss is doing. Or should I say, my former boss." The weight of "former" rolled off his tongue with an undertone of contempt. Jack felt the churning in his stomach deepen. There was no denying the truth in those words. All too often, the past reared its head just when he thought he was making progress. Each taunt echoed Mark's earlier challenge, wrapping tighter around Jack's throat, squeezing out the air from his newfound resolution. "I'm moving on," Jack stated firmly, though a hint of a battle cry trembled within him. He turned briefly to Mark, whose smug expression twisted into something deeper, more menacing, as if this was all fun for him, a game he could win with a few played cards from their history. "Are you, Jack?" Chris interjected, stepping further into the room and highlighting the stark contrast between them. "You think you can erase the blood and sweat we poured into this life? You think those scars just vanish?" He gestured animatedly. "You got a taste of power, and now you want to run towards the light. But the shadows, they don't forget." Jack clenched his jaw, feeling the heat of familiarity stir within him. He remembered the reckless nights spent planning their next big thing,
hard-living memories now blurred with regret. Those shadows are what I'm trying to escape. You could too, Chris. Chris let out a cynical laugh, the echo bouncing off the broken walls of the warehouse. You think anyone cares about your heroic quest for redemption? You're just showcasing a new persona, but deep inside, you'll always want the thrill. A fresh wave of frustration surged through Jack, igniting his determination. I'm not the same man who craved power. I'm trying to build something real, something that won't destroy me or anyone else. And what's that, exactly? Chris probed, a slight edge creeping into his voice. A life of mediocrity? Sitting in meaningless meetings? Patting yourself on the back for sharing your angst? That's not success. There was a moment of silence, a shared contemplation of what success meant. Jack's heartbeat quickened as he reflected on the contrast. He saw clarity, the capacity for restoration, against the starkness of despair that Chris represented. I'll be successful when I'm creating, when I'm helping others, Jack articulated, feeling the power surging within his words. Not when I'm caught in a cycle of destruction. Mark sneered at this new assertiveness, but Jack wasn't finished. What's stopping you, Chris? You're still stuck in that same narrative, a tragic tale of ambition lost in chaos. You have a choice. We all do. They stood in silence. Jack's heart banged against his ribcage, the urge to break down or push forward warring within him. This was a pivotal moment, where the weight of old grievances clashed with the potential for something healthier. Jack realized as he stared deep into Chris's eyes, searching for a flicker of acknowledgement, that he could no longer afford to think he was fighting only for himself. This was a battle for anyone who dared to reclaim their lives, for the ones left in the shadows, suffering beneath the weight of their choices. Suddenly, Mark snickered, shattering the fragile quiet that lingered. You really think you can change him? Jack's resolve hardened. Apparently, there was more at stake here than just his personal redemption. This wasn't just about shifting his own life. It was becoming about inspiring those around him, challenging them to face their truths, even when it was inconvenient. As the atmosphere thickened, Jack felt the first twinges of doubt receding, replaced with a fierce clarity. He wasn't just fighting his past, he was standing up for the lives intertwined with his, a chance to guide anyone who felt stuck in darkness.
With newfound determination, Jack faced both Mark and Chris, ready to contest the very nature of their reunion. Maybe it's time we all confront our truths, not just in this room, but outside these walls. The air encoded with urgency, Jack felt the weight of a new challenge loom large ahead of him. Could he really ignite change, not just for himself, but for the lost souls around him? That was the question he would grapple with next. In the following days, the air buzzed with uncertainty and anticipation. Jack stood in the dim warehouse, now not just a symbol of his past, but a harbinger of possibilities, as he considered how to approach the realm of peace he had so ardently envisioned. The conversations with Mark and Chris laid bare an unsettling truth. The weight of his former choices was a constant factor in every decision. Yet, Jack understood that dwelling on the past would only tether him further to it. He had to gather strength from what was now an undeniable path toward transformation. Each morning, he awoke with a commitment to shift the narrative. Revisiting the foundational relationships with his crew took precedence, but it required more than just words. Jack began to implement discussions anchored in transparency and hope, recognizing that demonstrating authenticity was as crucial as asserting authority. Successfully navigating this shift from fear to empowerment was not solely about his ambition. It became about establishing a collective understanding of what true leadership could embody. Conversations morphed into tangible plans. Instead of making calculated moves driven by paranoia, he began branching out to forge alliances with communities linked to their trade, studying market trends and using insight to create a sustainable path forward. He re-engaged with the very rivals he had once viewed through a lens of hostility. To earn respect, he needed to offer it first. His intentions ignited a zeal among his crew. Quietly, he noticed a subtle shift, murmurs of excitement murmuring in corners, infusing hope into their ranks. As his leadership blossomed in newfound ways, invitations for engagement from local businesses materialized, an encouraging sign that others were beginning to believe in the concept of collaboration rather than confrontation. Jack's renewed quest for legitimacy bore fruit. He'd even managed to broker a tentative peace with a rival group through a series of open dialogues that concluded in mutual agreements, a stark departure from the violent transactions of the past. One afternoon, Maria visited the warehouse, her eyes scanning the remnants of chaos, now laced with flickers of promise. She was cautious but hopeful, her nurturing spirit eager to see her beloved Jack emerge renewed.
The conversation turned to Jack's progress. He expressed pride in his efforts that were slowly yet profoundly reshaping their futures. "I've taken up the mantle, Maria," he confessed, eyes gleaming with determination.
Every day is a test. I assert trust, and it ignites something beautiful in these men. A smile graced his features, though uncertainty flickered at its edges. Can that spark last amid the uncertainties? Maria's inquiry, although gentle, struck deep, resonating as a reminder of the delicate foundation he was building. Failure is inevitable, but it won't deter me. Every time I embrace vulnerability, it reinforces trust, and that, I believe, is true strength. Her quiet admiration washed over him like a comforting embrace, filling the empty spaces he once felt. Weeks passed, and the impact of his endeavor materialized. The once divided crew now moved as a unified front, their purpose reflecting genuine cohesion. Negotiating contracts became routine. The dark clouds of violence were lifted from Jack's shoulders, revealing a sunlit path ahead. Yet, the ghosts of doubt still lingered. Chris remained skeptical, an impressive obstacle that would test Jack's resolve. One evening, Jack invited him for a showdown of sorts, their prior loyalties entwined with expectations that felt heavy and daunting. "Do you see what is happening here?" Jack asked, frustration bubbling under the surface as he made his case. "This community can shift. It can support us if we let go of the past. We deserve something, to build futures outside of this darkness." Chris eyed him, doubt still etched in his features. "Faith is not something given lightly, Jack." This was the pivotal moment. Jack squared his shoulders, determination soured by the uncomfortable reality of Chris's skepticism, but he knew he had to respond courageously. "Look, whatever reservations you have, I need you to trust me. I see the value in my past as a lesson, not a leash." Chris shrugged, yet the flicker of recognition crossed his visage. Perhaps, Jack thought, he wasn't the only one standing on the edge of a precipice. Days transformed into weeks, and moments of connection layered upon each other. A week later, as the sun lowered in a crimson blush, Jack arrived at a meeting with community leaders and potential investors, ready to unveil a proposal for cooperative growth. The conference room was less intimidating than the warehouse, filled with life and potential. As he stepped forward, Jack felt the spirit of new leadership wash over him. He delivered his vision, filled with authenticity and tangible plans, crafting a narrative of hope. And for once, the echoes of old threats faded. The room thrummed with engaged energy. Near the meeting's conclusion, the head of a prominent local business, seeing potential written in the enthusiasm before him, regarded Jack. "Earning this level of respect amid your past is commendable. If you can pull this off, you have my support." As moments unfolded, Jack felt weariness falling from him like storm clouds dissipating before sunlight. This wasn't merely recognition, it was validation of his ambitions and actions, a mark of growth beyond just personal redemption.
With renewed vigor, Jack stepped outside. The world felt brighter, and within his chest, a solid confidence settled. He faced the lingering doubts of his past and emerged, not just as a leader, but as an empowered human being ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. The horizon now glistened with possibilities, each step further reinforced by his evolving identity. Each conversation reinforced trust, drawing the lines from past mistakes to a canvas of renewed purpose. As he walked toward the sunset, Jack felt pride surge within him. He was no longer defined by his past, but by the future he constructed through integrity and courage. A journey of true transformation had manifested, a reality he had only dreamt of before. It was time to celebrate this achievement, an enduring testament to his newfound self. But as with all journeys, this was just the beginning. The commitment to change was a perpetual battle, one he was resolved to continue winning. Now take a step into your journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support.
Don't wait even one more second to share. You understand the importance of supporting personal overcoming stories. Make your voice count.